Today, we are going to be embarking on a voyage and exploring one of the most iconic titles in skateboarding history, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater on the PlayStation. Released in 1999 by Neversoft Entertainment, this game revolutionized the sports genre and left an incredible mark on gaming history. I personally grew up playing the third Pro Skater game and up, apart from a PC port of Pro Skater 2, which I vaguely remember, which still gives me nightmares to this day. With that being said, I have never been able to fully experience this franchise from the beginning. So today, we're going back to where it all started. Today, we're going to see if this game had a victorious voyage or ended up being a sunken shipwreck. When Tony Hawk's Pro Skater released in 1999, it was an unmatched gem, and gave players an adrenaline rush from its very basic but enjoyable concept. With 2-minute time intervals per map, players were tasked with completing a list of goals in the allotted time. This, matched with the fluid controls and mechanics, made for tight and creative gameplay, as players were able to come up with a new, creative plethora of ways to complete the goals. However, with any amazing new thing, the varnish will eventually wear off and some stains will be left on the final product. In this case, for Pro Skater 1, the lack of having manuals in the game made big combos very difficult for a lot of players. While playing through the game, this was by far the biggest issue that came up with me time and time again, and at times got pretty frustrating. It doesn't make the game bad or unplayable by any means, but it does show its age quite well, aside from the PS1 era graphics. Luckily, this and more features will be added to the franchise, making it, in my opinion, one of the best controlling and addictive gameplay loops I've ever seen or played. Speaking of playing, one of the most important aspects of game design, aside from how it performs and controls, is how it even feels to be in the game itself. Let's talk about each of the maps, starting with the one that started it all, Warehouse. Warehouse is a small and enclosed industrial area nestled with stacks of wooden crates, brick walls, and rusty machinery that have been the epicenter of skateboarding for a long time. Everything from the scuffs and scratches made this level seem like it set the stage for what type of video game that Pro Skater was going to be. Starting off, every run won't be the prettiest, but after some scrapes and bruises, you will eventually get better at your craft, and learn how to become a pro skater. For this being the first level in the entire franchise, Neversoft came out swinging, and they swang hard. Warehouse might not be the prettiest and most eye-catching map out there. This map skates like a dream and shows you a small sample of what is to come from the full game. While it may not be my most favorite map of all time, I thought I should pay homage to where it all began because this map is pretty great. The goals of this level were relatively easy to complete, and on my first attempt at recording this playthrough, I completed all the levels in the first attempt. I ended up scrapping this part though from my playthrough on the secondary channel because I am ridiculous and didn't check my audio levels before recording. I believe that this level serves as a perfect entryway into the series for both new and old players alike, because it doesn't ask for a whole lot from players, and it's about learning the mechanics and trying to score the most points. School is one of those maps that is so iconic and is going to be one of the most recognizable maps throughout THPS history. Ironically, School was the first map in this game that made me start realizing how much of a playground the game could be, and I was able to start stringing together longer and larger combos. However, without manuals and reverts, this was very short-lived, but I was able to do a lot more with my score multiplier and start seeing some positive results. One criticism I have of this map though is that a lot of the map went unused in terms of completing goals. This isn't a deal breaker, but I felt like it didn't promote a lot of exploration on this level since the goals were relatively in plain sight, and maybe the exception of the secret tape, which is just hard to see because of the lack of camera control. That point aside, this map is very nice to look at and serves as a completely different creative view than Warehouse, which shows how versatile the game could be, even on the days of the PlayStation. As a longtime player of this franchise, I've got to be honest with you guys, School is probably one of my least favorite original maps. I couldn't tell you what it is about it. If I had to guess, it was a bit oversaturated throughout the games, with almost every Tony Hawk game getting their new and updated version of the School map. I realize that it's extremely iconic, and by far not the worst map in these games, but I couldn't help but feel that I'd played this level thousands of times before, probably because I had. Mall is certainly a classic map in the Pro Skater series. Taking place in an eerily empty and quiet shopping center, Mall is complete with escalators, planters, rails, and benches for new and old skaters alike to shred some sick combos. The goals in the level encourage players to explore the area and try new things, such as jumping off some areas to grab the secret tape for instance. As a self-proclaimed Tony Hawk's video game veteran, I have never been the biggest fan of Mall. I've never been too intrigued with the downhill style maps where you just head straight down, apart from Airport from Pro Skater 3, which in my opinion is one of the best maps in the entire franchise. However, I kind of like the flow of Mall in this iteration of the game. I don't know if it's an anti-nostalgia thing, seeing this map in low poly graphics, but I found Mall to be quite charming while playing through it. It isn't the best map in the game, but it certainly isn't the worst. One big issue I have with the downhill themed maps in these games is that the run just ends after you reach the bottom of it, instead of looping like they would eventually have you do in the sequels. It doesn't entirely ruin the map, but it does encourage you to be way riskier with combos so you don't miss your chance in something, such as a skate ladder or the secret tape. I can see why this would be more exhilarating for fast players, but to me it was just a tad bit frustrating having to break the goals into multiple attempts because of this. Aside from that, this map is at its worst fine, and at its best, fun for the first game. I feel like I've been really upbeat and pretty positive when it comes to the majority of this game so far, but let me be negative for a change, because I want to give my unfiltered thoughts about this game. Throughout my almost 20 years of playing the Tony Hawk franchise, I have never really been a fan of the competition-styled levels in these games, which is weird because I generally love going for the highest score and big combos in other levels. Skate Park is the map in the series that gives us the competition level type for the first time, and the timer is cut in half into 3 segments. While playing through this game for my review, a lot of my steam and energy burned out after this level, just because I had to reload so many times because of botched combos and low scores. I will fully admit that I am not the best THPS player in the world. That record would probably go to Andy THPS, player and developer of future THPS games, wink wink. But what I will say is that a lot of this felt more unfair and stacked against me, because of the lack of refined controls and added mechanics. I want to be clear also and say that these levels don't ruin the game for me. Things did grind to a sluggish halt on my first blind playthrough. After a little trial and error though, I was able to muster up some terribly strung together combos to beat the level. Speaking of skate park though, the level is just what is advertised, an indoor skate park. There isn't a lot to offer here, and it's pretty bland in my opinion, but this isn't the worst map in the world to play through. Cruising into the burbs, we now arrive at Downtown, which is another map that has been included in future games, having a rendition of it in Thug 2 for that game's appointed classic mode. Downtown is a playground of cool architectural wonders, featuring an eclectic mix of obstacles and structures that beg to be skated upon. Whether you're grinding along the edges of buildings, performing high-flying tricks off of ramps, or weaving through tight gaps, Downtown provides an adrenaline-filled setting for players to push the limits of their imagination when it comes to skateboarding. Growing up starting to play religiously from Pro Skater 3, I have never found Downtown to be my favorite map. However, I am pleased to admit that this game breathed new life into this map for me, because I felt like I was able to enjoy the map through a new lens. For a PS1 game, I think this map fits perfectly in the game, and proves to be one of, if not the best place to test out your skating rigor in the first entry in the series. This map is also the largest area in the game from what I understand, and it earns this title well, without having too much dead space just for the sake of space. I found the rooftops in this level to be really cool, and it gave you a lot of room to experiment with different types of tricks and combos without having to spend an obscene amount of time learning the map and how it played. I would argue that this is one of the best maps in the game. Kickflipping into the next and final downhill map of this game, we arrive at Downhill Jam. I have a lot to say about this map, since I have always had a soft spot in my heart for it, especially in Thug 2. Speaking of Thug 2, it's hard to review this game without mentioning where the series would eventually head. I'm sorry if that seems like it clouds my judgment of this game, but in my opinion it makes it more relevant because I can judge how the game plays in comparison to how it would eventually reach in its final form, so to speak. Downhill Jam in Pro Skater is the exact antithesis of how I think it should be compared to Thug 2's classic mode inclusion. Much like Mo from earlier in this video, Downhill Jam features a one-and-done playstyle when it comes to traversing this level. Once you reach the bottom of the hill, the round ends, forcing you into retrying the level from a new attempt. I think that the momentum of this level gets completely interrupted in this game, whereas in Thug 2 you are encouraged to go down again to get any of the goals you missed out in the first run. This doesn't kill the map for me, but it certainly makes it a lot harder to enjoy, because of the variety of goals you have to complete in this level. For instance, some of the goals in this map take place above a lot of where most of the map takes place, so it almost requires multiple attempts to do this level for the average player. Don't get me wrong, it would be a fun challenge for returning players to try mastering the maps to do it in one go, which as a long-term player of the series appeals to me, but for a first-time visit for the sake of making a review on it, it came off as a bit frustrating. Aside from that, the level works like a charm and is one of my favorite downhill maps. There is a lot of combo potential here, and you can maintain some pretty big air with the number of ramps and half-pipes in this level. I also found it particularly anxiety-inducing getting the secret tape on this level because of how wonky the controls can be in this game. Nevertheless, this is one of my favorite maps in the game, and luckily, they fixed the looping issue for the remasters in 2020. Heading directly into the next map in this game, Burnside is the second of 3 competition-based levels in the first game, and it certainly plays like one. I found this level to be super forgettable in the longevity of the series, and it's very small. It was a little bit easier in my opinion to rack up higher scores than it was in Skate Park, but it didn't have any locations or combo places that really spoke to me or interested me. It just felt like an intermission level to get to the better levels in the game, in my opinion. I would probably rank this map as the worst in the game, and that is quite impressive, because it's not like I just hate Burnside. In my opinion, it's not one of the worst or best maps in the franchise. It's just one of the maps in the franchise. In a world that brought us Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, I can gladly and proudly admit that Burnside is better than any of the maps in the dumpster fire of a game. Goes grinding back into the city, Streets is the final goal-oriented level in this game, and it's also one of the best. From ledges, rails, and stairs to this weird bank you can bust through to do some serious shredding, this map just has tons of personality. My favorite part of this level was finding a creative way to get myself onto the tallest building in the level and doing a leap of faith off of it to collect the secret tape, and being surprised that I got it on my first jump. I even found it hilariously charming when I got plowed down by the trolley that makes its way through the map. This level to me felt super nostalgic and like a callback to a classic age from these types of games that we just don't have that much nowadays. This level also felt like the most alive than its predecessors, ranging from the trolley to the police cars and bank, all the way to these buildings that you can ollie your way into, which hide some of the goal items. I'm sure there is bound to be quite a bit of discussion in the community about which map from this game is the best and which is the worst, so let me know if you would like me to do a tier list ranking the maps from these games. Board sliding our way into the final level, we find ourselves stranded in Roswell for the last competition-based goal. To me, Roswell is easily the best map out of the competition levels, and it even ranks up there among the classics of the series. There isn't a whole lot to say about this level other than it plays nicely and it feels well put together. One thing I wanted to mention is that throughout playing through this game, I was unable to listen to the game's soundtrack because of copyright purposes for the playthrough of this game, and this level's sound is just very ominous. It felt almost like I was skating somewhere that I shouldn't be, which I guess is appropriate for a map called Roswell. Speaking of, if you want to watch me play through this game, head over to my second channel, 10 Plays, to see my VOD-styled content, where I played through the game, and I'm planning on playing through the rest of the series. Link to the channel will be in the description of this video. Thanks. In conclusion, Tony Hawk's Potater is a timeless skateboarding video game that launched an entire franchise for players to enjoy for decades. The meticulously designed maps, including the pulse-pounding downhill jam, the iconic warehouse, the vibrant mall, the gritty streets, and the distinctive downtown, provide skaters and gamers alike with diverse and immersive environments to explore. Each map presents and contains a list of challenging goals and gaps, which are heavily addictive and an awesome starting point to where the series will eventually go. Playing through Pro Skater feels like playing an alpha build of one of your favorite games, just with a lot less of the features being present. I wouldn't say it's the primary and best way to play the game, but it's certainly worth checking out to try for yourself and see where the franchise came from. In the end, I am super grateful for playing through this game, because I got to go back and experience gaming history and showcase it all for you guys, in all of its low poly glory. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to the channel. I have lots of videos planned for release soon. If you enjoyed this episode of Vintage Voyage, let me know in the comments below what other games you would like to see in this series in the future. I don't really have any restrictions, so I guess I'll say that anything that is at least 10 to 15 years old would categorize as vintage for this series.